Hello! I think we're live. Welcome! Welcome to Show No Draw Some Stuff. Today we're doing coloring. Um, so first I want to just thank everyone who joined me on my stream yesterday. It was kind of an impromptu sort of thing. I just wanted to draw some comics and figured I'd share it with you guys. But I might make that a regular thing, but we're always going to have the scheduled Saturdays and Tuesdays. That's going to stay pretty consistent, with maybe some mild changes and maybe some Fridays nights thrown in there as well. But let's get to the actual drawing. So we're going to do some coloring today. As you can see, the piece I have up here is not colored, and we're not going to be coloring this one. This is, if you were with my stream last week, you'll remember this piece. This is the finished commission from last week. So I figured if you were with my stream last week, you guys might want to see how it finally ended up. So we are going to work on this piece today. We're going to keep on coloring this, but I haven't done any drawing yet today. So I'm going to do a little bit of warming up. So yesterday, I did this sketch. I was feeling very nostalgic, so I wanted to draw some 90s anime style. So I drew my character WarAngel as if how she would look if she was in like a late 80s, early 90s anime. So I sketched that up. I really liked it, so I threw down some ink lines, and I'm gonna warm up now coloring that. And then, okay, I'm still getting used to this streaming thing. All right, it's a little bit smaller over here. All right, that should do. Still trying to figure out the best setup for me to be able to see everything I need to do. All right. Okay. So back at it. Okay, so so we're gonna warm up here. We're gonna do some coloring of my 90s anime WarAngel. So the first thing we gotta do, we have our line art layer. So gotta create a coloring layer. And I'm not quite sure if my shortcut's going to work here, so we're going to give it a try. So I'm going to make the line art layer. I'm going to reference that layer. Go to my coloring layer. And let's see. Bucket. Go to close and fill. And start with a nice orange color for her hair. Orangey red. I have a feeling this isn't going to work well. Oh well, let's give it a try. Helps if I use the right tool. Okay, it seemed to mostly work. I don't like that orange though. So, I guess I should ask before we get too far into it, how am I sounding? Am I sounding all right? Am I coming through clearly? Is the music okay? Is the music too loud? Too soft? Let me know how everything's coming through. A little bit better. Sounds clear. Music just soft enough? Okay, cool. Awesome. See, my problem with the close and fill tool here isn't that there's necessarily anything wrong with the tool. It's just the way I ink, it doesn't, the tool doesn't seem to like how I ink. So it doesn't always close and fill the way I want it to. It gets close, but it's not perfect. Like that, totally ignored that one part. That's fine. Let's go in. We'll do it manually here. Clean this up a bit. So when the close and fill works, it's it saves a lot of time, but when it doesn't quite work the way you want it to, I lose a little bit of time having to go back over some areas. So as always, if you guys have any questions about my process or what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, or you just want to just talk, feel free to leave comments in the chat. I'll answer them. At least I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah. Okay. So since the close and fill isn't quite working the way I want it to, we're going to go good old lasso tool. I'm just going to lasso all this up. You might notice in this area there's a little bit of a Y there. I'm hoping as I get the coloring in, you'll see what that's all about. Because as I started making this drawing, I felt very nostalgic. So I wanted to kind of create a drawing that kind of cashed in on that. use my nostalgia to big advantage. So to answer your question, I don't know how many messages you've sent sideways. I got your response about sounding clear and the music, but that's all I've seen so far. So if you sent more comments than saying that my audio sounds good, I have not seen those messages. But if you're getting, it doesn't look like anything's going wrong on my side. So if the stream's not coming through, whether it's the chat or whatever, you might want to just refresh on your end. Maybe refreshing the browser. I'm not sure what you're watching it on. Watching mobilely, maybe restart the app. Oh. You guys hear music, but I didn't play any music for myself. Let me get some playing for me. There we go. All right, this is looking good. Color. So how's everyone's Saturday going? I know we're only in the early afternoon, but hopefully everyone's having a nice, relaxing day. Hopefully no one's had to go to work. Or if you have had to go to work, I hope you're back. Or even better, I hope you're watching this at work. That'd be a pretty sweet gig. Although don't get fired. Don't get fired for watching me on Twitch. Thanks, Sam Lee. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Oh no, Tug, you're recovering from a cold. Whoops, wrong color. I always hate the flatting part of coloring. It's like a coloring book. And I know a lot of people like those like adult coloring books. They find it relaxing or just enjoyable, and that's great. I hate that part of coloring. I find it so tedious. I just want to get like the values and the highlights and the special effects and all the fun stuff with coloring. The flatting I find so boring. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's why a lot of professional comic book colorists have assistants that do the flatting for them, or they outsource to other artists where they pay someone else to do all the flats so then they can do all the values after. So I think maybe everyone hates doing this. Obviously not everyone, because people do the flatting job, so they can't all hate it. It's coming along. Let's give it a save. Have some coffee. These flats down. Personally, what I love about this drawing is that it's so different from my normal style. Like, because I rarely draw this 90s anime style. If you're kind of new to my art, like, this is the kind of stuff I normally draw, like This is normally my style, and we'll get to this a little bit later. Where like this is another piece that's more in line with my style. But I was feeling very nostalgic for old anime, so that's where this piece came from. Although this character, her name is WarAngel, and she's a character from my comic Shadows of Oblivion. There's probably a link to it somewhere down below. So webcomic comes out weekly. Our new page comes out weekly, I should say. Anime mixed with anime. That's what you're doing. How do you mix anime with anime? Or you're mixing comics with anime? I think they call that manga. Oh no, I'm totally misunderstanding. Right. So if you're doing a comic, is it on, does it have a website, or are you doing it on Webtoons? Or are you printing it up? Yeah, I got my coffee right here. All right. You know, I've drawn this character 100 billion times and I still messed up the colors. Can you believe that? There we go. A lot of people don't realize, so I'm picking a brown here for the strap. A lot of people don't realize that brown is just a devalued orange. Yeah, brown is really interesting. Like if we look at my wheel here, this slider here is the value. So we have, red, blue, green, orange. And then this top part of the square is the saturation. So if it's all the way to the left, there's no saturation of that color, which means it's going to be white. If it's all the way to the right, it's fully saturated. And then if at the top of the square too is fully has full value, but as you move it down, it takes away the value, and once there's no value, it turns black. So if we go down to our orange value here, so orange at full saturation, full value, if we bring down the saturation and bring down the value, you get brown. Pretty cool, right? Manga doesn't have the detail that comics have, if that makes sense. I would disagree with that. I think it depends on the comic and or manga. Like, there is some manga out there, like one that I'm reading right now, Promised Neverland. Crazy amount of detail. Like, the backgrounds are gorgeous. But then you get other mangas like I don't want to throw romance mangas under the bus, but a lot of romance mangas, they don't really have many backgrounds. It just focuses on the people talking, and so there's not really a whole lot of detail going on there. And then you get that with action too. If you look at like Bleach, I know is one that's infamous for not doing a lot of details in their backgrounds. So I think, and you can say the same thing with comics too. Yeah, Berserk, that's a good one. Sideways, that's... Berserk has a crazy amount of detail. And then same thing with American comics. Like, there's some American comics that are crazy detailed, and then there are others that really skimp on it. I'm of the opinion that comics are comics. It doesn't matter where they're from. American comics, Italian comics, French comics, Japanese, Korean. They're all basically the same. Of course, their cultures might change what they focus on, what's important to their storytelling. Some cultures, it's more important to focus on the line work or the colors or just the way they tell stories is different. But the medium of comics itself is the same. Oh man, Liefeld skimps on his backgrounds all the time. If you, I've been watching this YouTuber by the name of, the YouTube channel is called Comic Tropes. I've been watching a lot of his stuff lately, and he did a video on Liefeld, a more recent Liefeld comic, and he did a side-by-side comparison of his line work with the final colors, and he did like nothing for the background. Those colorists, I don't know, man. I hope they're paid a lot because they do a lot of heavy lifting for Liefeld comics. Liefeld will do a couple squiggly lines, and then the colorist has to put in all the details, all the textures, all the lighting. They work overtime. Oh no, a Liefeld sale. In my opinion, like, I don't want to say I necessarily like Liefeld's artwork, but it really worked for the 90s. That is not working for a mouth. Yeah, poor colors. That's what I'm saying. I hope the colorists are paid a lot. Traditionally, colorists don't get paid as much uh, as like the penciler or inker. But you're doing as much work as they're doing for a Liefeld comic. I hope they're making a ton. Yeah, I go there too for Liefeld. Like, this is the thing. In my opinion, despite all his problems with backgrounds and anatomy, his work really works for early 90s comics. Like, when the coloring was still traditional, like the digital coloring hadn't taken over yet. They were still printing on newsprint. Like, for the way the comics were reproduced at the time, Liefeld's style really, really worked for it. And then once they started printing on glossy paper, getting digital colors, all his weaknesses really were highlighted, and it started to become, well, ridiculous. Not that it wasn't ridiculous before, but it worked. And that's my opinion about that. I think that's why when I read, like, his New Mutants and his X-Force run, I don't think to myself, wow, this is terrible. In fact, I think, wow, this is awesome. But then when I look at some of his, like, Youngblood comics, it's like, it hurts. You mean, like, are they credited for the covers, or credited in, like, the comic itself, or what? I'm not sure what you mean about getting recognition for the covers. Um, you, uh, I'm not 100% sure about that. I I haven't picked up a Marvel comic in a while, or any mainstream comic in a while, to be honest. Uh, if my memory serves, and I could be misremembering, there were always three names. It was usually the writer, the penciler, and the inker. Sometimes the colorist too. Because sometimes I remember there being sometimes four names, but usually three. No, I don't think you're wrong. I do think they definitely gave credit to the writer and penciler for sure, and probably the inker. I don't know. You know, the more I'm thinking about it, I think you're right, Doug. I don't think they put the colorist's name on the covers. Because sometimes the colors aren't done by a person, but done by a studio that's outsourced. And so you'll see the studio name in the credits instead of a person's name. And I've never seen like a studio name on the cover of a comic. So you might be right. No, right. No, maybe. You're probably right. It's a bit too yellow. There we go. So I gotta put a background in here soon. Do you guys have any suggestions what I should do for a background? Castle. I don't know if I want to draw a castle, but I think you gave me a good idea there. I don't have a lot of room to work with. Huh. One thing I always like about those old traditionally animated animes, cartoons, whatever, is that how the foreground always had very flat looking. Yeah, There's a lot of WarAngel on the page, huh? But what I always liked about it is there's this line art with flat colors in the foreground and this very painterly background. I'm not going to spend a ton of time painting a background here, but I'm not going to bother drawing with any kind of line art. I'm just going to kind of draw in where the colors should be. So even though I don't want to draw a castle, I think drawing some cliffs here might be interesting. Okay, let's see. Alright, so I'm going to switch brushes up here. I'm going to lock the transparency so I can't accidentally paint outside of it. We'll start kind of painting in where the highlights should be. I'm kind of doing a big no-no here. I'm kind of doing this without a reference. Should probably look at a cliff face or something to see if I can make it look a little more realistic. Actually, let's do that. I'm going to give this a save. Let me pull up a quick reference. Okay. I'll work with that. Oh yeah, get some Bob Ross Mountains. You're right. Actually, Bob Ross is broadcasting this weekend, so I think after I'm done with the stream, I'm going to probably host Bob Ross, because more art is always better. So if I can't be streaming, I might as well be streaming some an amazing artist. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I kind of just want to get the impression that happy little mountains. Mostly just want to get the impression that it's a rocky surface here. Good color in there. We're getting there. One thing I didn't consider, I think I'm going to add it in a minute, is add a little greenery on here. Make it look a little bit more believable. That's really the bottom line when it comes to making art. Is just making it believable. It doesn't have to be realistic. It just has... Excuse me. You just have to... It has to be believable, where people look at it and they think, yeah, I totally believe those are mountains. Or I totally believe that's a person. Or I totally believe those are wings, or a person can fly. And if you can do that with stick figures, awesome. If you can do that with a realistic painting, also awesome. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Let's throw a bit of a texture on it. Don't forget to whack the devil out of it. I think that's a decent looking mountain or rock face, but let's throw some trees on there. Let's put a happy little tree to help it look a little bit more believable. Let's see, where are my brushes? Vegetation. See, I got a lot of respect for Bob Ross, not only because he was an amazing painter, and that he did his PBS show for free. He made all his money from drawing lessons or doing painting lessons, so he didn't really need the money from PBS. So he just did that just for his love of art. But I also respect him because he did all his painting traditionally. So, you know, I'm doing everything on layers here. So if I really hate how I put down these trees, like I could just get rid of the layer and start over. But Bob Ross, he had to literally put paint over what he had already painted, and had to be very brave and bold about it. Now, I say Bob Ross, like other painters didn't have to do that. Every traditional painter has to do that, but it just shows his level of mastery to so confidently throw down paint on top of paint and not be afraid that he might mess up. I'm sure he probably was. I think every artist has that fear inside of them where they're afraid that they'll make a mistake and can't take it back. Like a good example here, I don't like how this looks here, so I'm actually just going to fix that. You'll notice I'm kind of just Bob Ross style, just layering different textures here to kind of get the feeling. I don't like this either. I think that looks pretty good. Now let's get some clouds in the sky. Happy little mistakes. It's no challenge, Bob. Yeah. He, I mean, it's not like he was just born that way. Like, he worked his butt off to get as good as he was, but he was still that good. He is fantastic. Now let's put in some happy little clouds. So since I'm not as good as Bob Ross, I'm just going to use a brush tool. Cloud brush. And I'm also going to do it on another layer. A little happy cloud. Oh, I'm glad you're liking it. Alright, that's actually looking pretty good. Alright, so next part. Let's get some shadows here on our main character. So since I'm trying to be a little nostalgic here, you know what? Actually, first things first. I got to. Because I want this to look a little bit like older anime. Here. This layer, this layer, and this layer. So I'm going to duplicate all these layers. Here. And I'm going to merge them. Selected layers. And then what I'm going to do is with like the old paintings when they were photographed, they kind of lost some of their saturation. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to the reason I didn't want to lose all the work I did for all these other layers. That's why I kind of combined this layer. So I didn't just lose all the work I did, but I want to make some adjustments here. I want to lower the saturation just a tad. Raise the brightness just a tad. And then I'm going to blur it just a little. Oops, if I'm on the right layer. There we go. I am using a Wacom. I have a very old Cintiq. So you see how, if I zoom in here, my background has it's a little desaturated, it's a little blurry, and that it has that more of that old feeling from old anime. Now it doesn't quite have the grain of the paper that a traditional piece would have, and I might do something to try to simulate that in a minute, but for right now, let's get back to putting shadows in our main character here. So alright, so again, this whole thing started because I was feeling nostalgic, and so this is more traditional-ish animation. So we're just going to do a cell shade over here. So I create a new layer, lower the opacity of that layer. Get a good shadow color. And now let's do some shading. Let's see, which way should the light come from? Based on what I did on the mountains, the light has to come from the left, so that means our shadows have to be on the right side. Let's see. I'm not completely sold yet on the shadow color. I might change this up. Might be a little too... The value might be too low. I might need a more higher value color. I don't know. We'll see. Alright, this is starting to come together. Maybe I won't change the color. Wow, we've already been doing this for an hour. Can you believe it? How's everyone doing? Just drawing and watching the stream. That sounds like a wonderful use of your time. I love drawing and watching stuff. I actually, a lot of people ask me like what kind of music I listen to when I draw. But honestly, 90% of the time, I'm watching something. It might be a stream, or I might be watching some Mystery Science Theater. Or I found Riff Tracks has a channel here on Twitch, so I've been watching a lot of that while I draw. Obviously not now while I'm streaming, but if I'm just sitting at doing my work, I'll have Riff Tracks on. I'll probably host them in the future too, just so there's something on my channel. And Bob Ross isn't always on, so I might do them. So the good thing when you're doing cell shading here, if you pick a good color, you can use it for the whole thing. You don't have to keep changing colors up. Kind of like what I'm doing here. Like I have this dark purple, and I don't have to change the color every time I want to color a new part of WarAngel here. Because that purple works good with her skin tone, it works good with her hair, it's going to work good with her armor. Yeah, same with me. I can't draw with silence. My own inner thoughts drive me mad. So I need someone else talking. Helps me focus. But the funny thing is though, if I have to do any kind of writing, like if I'm writing my comics, I can't have anyone talking. I can't even have music on when I'm writing. Like I need absolute silence when I'm writing. And when I'm doing these streams, I have to have music on, because if I had someone talking, like another streamer or Mystery Science Theater or whatever, they would constantly be distracting me. I wouldn't be able to talk to you guys. It's coming along pretty good, I think. All right. All right. I'm very happy with how this is coming along. The great thing about using Clip Studio Paint here, we have this kind of draw with negative, so I can just almost acts like an eraser, but it takes on the properties of my pen or whatever tool I'm using. Comes in handy. Same when you sleep. See, I don't have that problem with when I sleep. Usually I'm just so tired in general, I just fall right asleep. You're saying you're using Autodesk Sketchbook? Autodesk makes quite a few pieces of software. Yep. Yeah, Sketchbook's a good piece of software. I always recommend it for when people ask me what software they should use digitally. Now, I don't use it, but it's not because it's a bad piece of software. It just doesn't do what I want it to do or what I need it to do for like making comics. Like Clip Studio Paint here has, you know, all these manga screen tones, and it has like tools for building panels and word balloons. Not that you can't do it in Sketchbook, but Clip Studio Paint makes it absurdly easy, which saves me time, which is always good when making a comic book. But yeah, Autodesk is free, or I keep saying Autodesk, but specifically Sketchbook is free, so it's an amazing piece of software for the price. Oh, on a tablet, like an iPad or something? Oh, thanks, Doug. I almost missed your chat there. You know, I spend all that... Oh, no, that's fine. This will work. Sketchbook runs better than Adobe? I guess it just depends. Well, on your tablet, that's probably true. Almost certainly true. Adobe needs a lot of power to run. So you need a very good laptop or a desktop to run it without any issues. Yeah, Adobe can be laggy if you don't have the RAM or just the processor or graphics cards. And depending on the type of tablet and the specs of your tablet, yeah, Adobe's not going to run very well. But Adobe also isn't built for just casual art making. They build it for professionals, so they don't really care. Adobe doesn't really take into consideration what the average person's computer or tablet might be. They're catering to professional creators that's going to have pretty powerful or relatively powerful machines. So for the average Joe, Adobe's not the best choice. Great software. I use Adobe. In fact, I'm going to use it a little bit later on this piece. But yeah, not for the casual or newbie artist. Or even, I still wasn't using Adobe even after I started being a professional. It's too expensive. Alright, almost done with the shading. Oh yeah, you gotta save up for those Wacom tablets. Now the Huion, I think I'm saying that right. Those tablets have been getting better, and they're less expensive than the Wacom. So those are always a good starter tablets. But Wacom's still the best at this point. Like that.